This is the first Sunday in the church's season known as Lent. The word Lent comes from the Latin word lengthen, which means lengthening, and refers to the lengthening sunlight of the days of spring. Days in sunlight that are very subtly making their way toward us. Lent is a season, 40 days plus Sundays, in which the church undertakes the spiritual preparations for the great celebration of Easter that is to come. In the ancient church's life, Lent was a time to prepare those who would make their profession of faith and be baptized on Easter morning. For those already in the church, Lent was a time of spiritual preparation and penance, signified by fasting and prayer. It is from that tradition of fasting that we still carry on the idea of giving up something for Lent. We will observe the ancient tradition of spiritual preparation through a series of sermons entitled Teach Us to Pray. On each of the Sundays in Lent, we will consider the subject of deepening Christian spirituality. We will use as an outline for these sermons the words of the Lord's Prayer. For the words of the Lord's Prayer set forth a teaching on how Christians are to relate to God and to one another. The Lord's Prayer is the beginner's course in the foundational aspects of living as a Christian in relationship with God and with our sisters and brothers in faith. Allow me to acknowledge from the outset the debt I owe to John C. Purdy in his book, Lord, Teach Us to Pray, published by the Curriculum Program. This entire series was inspired by that little but awesome book. If you'd like a copy, they're available in the church office. I invite you to read along as we make our way through these sermons. Well, let's begin by getting a definition of a few terms that will be critical for our understanding. What do we mean when we talk about spirituality? I recently have discovered a definition I find very helpful, offered to us by M. Sean Copeland, a Roman Catholic laywoman and associate professor of theology at Marquette University. The definition says, our spirituality is our capacity to relate to God, to other human beings, and to the natural world. Through these relationships, we give meaning to our existence and attune our hearts and minds to the deepest dimensions of reality. Thus, spirituality is integral to the ways in which we live our lives. Spirituality has everything to do with the way in which we connect with God, our neighbor, and our planet. That's our principal focus throughout this Lenten season. Central to our Christian spirituality is prayer. What is prayer? Well, again, Dr. Copeland offers us this guidance. Prayer is intimate conversation with God. Real, demanding, loving, and engaged conversation between a real person and a real and living God. Prayer implies relationship. It's a connection. A connection between the one who seeks and the one who finds. Between the one who searches for meaning and truth and the one who reveals it. It is because prayer is a relationship that Jesus began his prayer with the words, Our Father. He could just have easily have used the words, Our Mother. But the address of the Lord's Prayer has nothing to do with gender. It has everything to do with relationship. Jesus tells us that we can relate to God as a child relates to a parent. It's not an owner-servant relationship. It's not a ruler-subject relationship. It's not an all-powerful, powerless relationship. Instead, Jesus teaches that our spirituality and our prayer is all about a relationship based on love, caring, nurturing, providing, giving, guiding, purpose-driven love. And we need not fear God, nor do we need to try to hide from God. We need not try to impress God because God already knows us better than we know ourselves. We need not lie to God as we lie to ourselves, for God already knows the truth about us and loves us anyway. Our spirituality and the prayer life that sustains it is all about relationship. That's where we begin. But our relationship with God has one major proviso. Dr. Purdy begins his book with this statement. True prayer is that approach to our Creator in which God does not cease to be God and we do not cease to be human. Prayer lessens the distance between us, but it does not erase the distinctions. Prayer is a dialogue with the Holy One of Israel. It is not a chat over the fence with a next-door neighbor. God is present to us, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, but does not live next door. There are boundaries that must be respected and kept in this relationship we have with God. It is in reality no different than the relationship that most of us have with our parents. No matter how close we are or were to our parents, there were parts of our parents' lives about which we know or knew absolutely nothing. It's a wonderful joke that I can only tell at this 8:30 service because you'll appreciate it, I think, 10:30 people would be scandalized. But it comes from the Dave Ramsey course. Dave Ramsey says that when we think about our parents, it was always two things that we thought they didn't have. Money and sex. And it turns out they had both. We didn't know everything we thought we knew about our parents. Well, that's informative. Because in the same way, what we know of God, we know only because God chose to reveal it to us. Principally through Jesus Christ, but also through the pages of Scripture, God has allowed us to know God and chooses what to have us know. It's only by God's self-revelation that we know anything at all about God. So there is a distance between God and humankind. We are separated from God by our nature, not only as created beings, but by the reality that we have also rejected God's will and way and have sought to do things as we think they should be done. The distance between us, this space between God and ourselves, is real, and it cannot be lightly dismissed. That distance is what we call holiness. We call God holy, and that word comes from an ancient word that means completely other. God is completely different from us, totally unlike us. And when we translate the noun holy into a verb, the word becomes hallow. To hallow means remembering God's holiness and maintaining the proper distance and the distinctions it requires. Hallowing means recognizing and respecting the boundaries that exist between God and ourselves.